Good evening. The opinions and statements voiced by our guests do not necessarily reflect the opinions of this network. Enjoy the shows.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk only on Paranormal Experience Radio. Broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
And you are here with the Full Spectrum Project. I am your host, Brian Clune, and my co-host is with us, Pete.
Hi, y'all. This is Pete Haviland. I'm here in the sunny part of Houston.
There's a sunny part of Houston?
Not really, not today, but I thought I'd be smiles.
Anyway, we are also going to be joined at the top of the hour by Angie Mole. Say hello, Angie. Or not. Anyway, hopefully Angie will be with us for the Weird World News segment at the top of the hour. Today we are being joined by Linda Godfrey, and she is a cryptozoologist and has some just fascinating books that when I was doing research for the show, I'm thinking I'm going to have to get every single one of them. So welcome to the show, Linda. We are very happy to have you here.
Oh, I'm so glad to be with you guys tonight. Thanks so much for inviting me.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you. So Pete, just real quick, I finally got the Calico books. So if you want,
Good.
I can.
Good.
Instead of you having to wait for Amazon or wherever you ordered it, if you want, I can send you one. It's up to you.
Oh, that'd be cool. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, thank you.
But if you want it signed, I do charge, but I don't charge a lot. It's only $5 a letter. So signed or unsigned, which you want? Yeah, see, exactly. Linda knows. She probably charges the same.
I think I'll pass. I'll pass. I know you, and right. I can't trade in the signature for anything.
Oh, I'm lucky to get a dollar's worth of signature for it. Actually, I'm not sure. I've tried telling little kids that things I sign, it adds $5,000 worth of value to it. Most of the little kids don't have a sense of humor, and I really enjoy telling them that and seeing various expressions on the mom's faces. And then I
was going to say, just be thankful the kids don't pick up a book and throw it at you. I actually had that happen at the LA County Fair one. I was joking around with the kid's mom, and the kid actually picked up a book and tossed it at me. And I'm just like, really?
Oh, wow.
He must have read the book.
Yeah. Okay. You know what? Wait for Amazon, Pete. Just wait for Amazon.
I'm sorry. Is it too soon?
Yes.
I'm sorry, Brian. Guys.
By the way, Linda, if you haven't figured it out yet, Pete cracks himself up. So
that's okay. That's okay. You can be your own best fan. Then you'll always have one.
Well. Yeah, well, I don't have too many of my own, so I have to make up my own.
Oh, what? You ran out of money to pay for them?
Yeah, my checks aren't clearing like they used to.
That would explain it.
Yeah.
I think nobody's are clearing like they used to.
Tell me about it.
I feel better now.
All right, so let's get into this. So, Linda, if you could just sort of explain who you are for our listeners and what got you started in the field of cryptozoology.
Well, I am how can I put this? An artist, writer, cartoonist that I got to all of these by sort of accidental means, and they accidentally led me to being the newspaper reporter for 10 years at a little paper in Walworth County called The Week, and it was a real paper. I've seen accounts where they say it was a jotter type thing or something, but it wasn't. We had pretty, well, I think they were sophisticated, pretty neat stories. We were winning national awards for the time. It was a good paper. We had really great, it was like one of those old-time war room sorts of editing rooms where everybody had like a bottle of gin in their drawer, and then we had to duke it out to see who got the assignments at the big assignment meeting once a week, and you had to fight for it. It was really cool. I never expected anything like that in Walworth County, but that was where I was first introduced to this notion, people around Elkhorn, Wisconsin, which Elkhorn's the very center of Walworth, Wisconsin, which borderlines with Illinois. So it's way down there in southern Wisconsin. And I learned that there were rumors going around that people were seeing what they called a werewolf. And I know I laughed when I heard that, because it's not that I'm not a believer in these things. It's just that werewolves, especially at that time, nobody thinks about werewolves really anymore, except in comic books, because I think it's partly because it seems so obvious that they would have to be very different than they're portrayed in comic strips.
Or Universal Studios movies.
Yeah, exactly. So I kind of laughed, but I got to meet the county animal control officer. I had to interview him to do a story on mutilated animals that were being found, and a few other interesting things. And I finally got the nerve up to ask him if he had heard about this thing that people were saying they saw out by Bray Road. It wasn't always on Bray Road, B-R-A-Y is the spelling of that. It's the name of an old, long-lived farm family from the area. And the thing was that I was really taken by a few facts. One was that these people who were going out, and if there were people going out and imitating this thing, they had to be really brave and also kind of stupid for giving their names and addresses to the county official, who, if it was determined that somebody was just being a joker and making this up, would probably have gotten a phone call from the sheriff or something. So that gave me a little bit of pause at laughing this thing off. And then I decided to go and interview the people, and that was what really did it, because I had at least 6 or 7 people and I could have talked to more, but it wasn't given that much story space, because the editor just thought people would laugh about it for a week or two and forget it. So I limited myself to about 6 or so. And when I went to interview them, I realized they were a diverse bunch. There was an African American high school student. We had a middle-aged woman who worked a late factory shift. We had a man with quite priority at the Milwaukee airport who made his sightings because his regular hours of duty started at 4 a.m. And this thing is mostly nocturnal in Fleur. So anyway, there were farmers, there were all types of people. And that was another thing really in their favor. It wasn't like, one bunch of people who belonged to some group of friends or whatever got this up and thought it'd be a funny thing to do. It was like something that happened to each of these people and turned their lives upside down forever, when they realized they were looking at what seemed to be a wolf standing on its hind legs, quite large and very ripply muscled for a wolf. Had a big chest, long claws, pointy ears on top of the head, fangs on a long muzzle, and it seemed not to be afraid of people, which really kind of threw them for a loop, because many of the sightings happen when somebody's driving down a road late at night, the typical setting, and then all of a sudden this thing will either walk into the road or jump across the road or just stop and stare people in the eyes. And when it happens to that last category, people say it's really an eerie thing, because they don't seem afraid of the people. They all feel that it's trying to give them some sort of a message, not in like telepathic language, but just almost more through its body movements. And they say, I feel like it's trying to tell me, you can't get me. I'm better than you. If you tell anybody about me, I will come and get you. That kind of really threatening thing. And then just always runs into the darkness and goes about whatever it's doing. One woman did see it kneeling at the side of the road, almost down in the ditch. And those kinds of mammals that are, well, excuse me, I'm having some trouble with my voice, and if I seem to be choking up a little, it'll just interrupt my speech for a moment, and I'll get back on it. But it's not, what I meant to say is that this is not something canines do. They don't sit around and walk on their knees. You know, they're built a certain way, and that's how they stay. Well, this thing was kneeling, and moreover, it was holding a piece of some kind of dead animal, roadkill, up to its face with its palms turned upwards, holding it. And how many of you have a dog that you've ever seen eat by kneeling on the floor with whatever it has and holding, you know, the nice hamburger that you've given it or whatever, assuming you're a really obliging owner and you feed your dog hamburgers? Sorry about that.
Pete might.
Yeah, so it looked, I only give that comparison because she said it looked like it was really enjoying it, you know, and something really good. But they just don't hold things up in their hands to their muzzles. You know, nothing canine does that. They get down on the ground and tear with their nice big fangs. That's what those are for. So she became, and it looked at her. It looked it right in the eye, and she immediately felt it was from the devil, and she was very frightened of it. And there actually we're I don't know how much time we have left, but I can tell you next what happened. There was an event that's not in my book about it because I wasn't sure if I couldn't notify the right people to check it out. But there was a pretty amazing paranormal event that happened with this woman and the officer. Do you want me to go on here?
Oh, please.
Yes, please.
Oh, okay.
Please.
Okay. Well, yeah, I'd heard of it.
We're being quiet because we're listening.
Oh,
It's fascinating so far.
Well, you know, I'm a former art teacher, so I'm not used to quiet while I'm talking. I'm used to hearing, you know, sounds of pencils being thrown and clay being dumped outside and spitballs.
We can do that. We can do that if you want. Maybe we can throw in a heckle here and there, or you know, whatever makes you feel comfortable.
If you feel you have a Hector-worthy comment, that's fine with me. So, but anyway, this was just quite a really strange thing, because her name is Lori. She's listed. Her name is that's her first name in the book. She's changed her second name several times, but she went in to talk to the animal control officer herself, and was telling him about it. And I think that was the first time. And there were some really strange little noises that were making both of them uneasy. And all of a sudden, a bookshelf that had been firmly attached to the wall behind the official just came off the wall, and all the books came flying down on his desk and onto the floor.
Oh, wow.
And there was no reason for this to happen. They had it examined, and they just kind of looked at each other. And for a while, she wasn't even sure. Neither of them were sure they wanted that published. So, so that didn't come out until later. But and I really do try and respect the witnesses or eyewitnesses and what they're saying, and believe that they saw what they saw, even if. So
were they sort of thinking that this creature itself may have telepathically dropped the bookcase? What's the prevailing theory on that?
Well, they both felt that way because it was just a really unusual thing to have happened. And there was kind of a weird mood or atmosphere because there were a few odd things, such as a man dressed in white on a white horse came out of the woods and looking regal and just kind of disappeared, I guess. That one, it's always been kind of woozy on the facts for that particular one. But there were...
That's strange.
Yeah, places around the county where garbage bags full of dead dogs were found in there. And now there were reasonable explanations for that. And my other thing that I've always tried to do is keep that reporter's hat on and look to see if there is something else that it could have been, and not just fall in love with the first thing that occurred to me about it and have to stick by that. And when I went back and talked to the wildlife official, or the county official, I should say, he said, well, it was fact that at the time there were several large dog racing enterprises around. Dogs bred for races are very expensive, and if they're not producing for people, oftentimes people will go and just sort of dispose of them in terrible ways. And he thought that there might, based on some of the breeds they were finding, he thought that they might have been just from the dog tracks left over, shall we say. So that was it. I never knew, but I think I put all of those possibilities in my book. And my book was not written. Now this all started on New Year's Eve weekend in 91, 92. And I did not write the book.
Okay.
It went viral. And I couldn't have said that back then because nothing went viral. We didn't have the internet as we know it at that time, but it went national.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
that was the time of dial-up.
I'm sorry?
I said that was the time of dial-up. In
pretty
the 90s,
much.
Right? Early 90s.
Oh, yeah.
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 Yeah, well, we still had dial-up in 95, 96. So.
Yeah, my little grandsons look at those old movies and they say, "Grandma, why is there a black box hanging on the wall? What are those little circles on the black box hanging on the wall?" So yeah, but it also shows that they really wanted to talk to me because I started getting letters. They were snail mail. People had to actually look up in who knows what number of phone books to find where this was, and so there was that, and then people also had to look up the phone number, excuse me, the snail mail and the phone numbers. Yeah, I'm sorry, I just got distracted by something I saw on your screen. So my attention wanders easily. I apologize for that. So anyway, that was another interesting aspect, and there was really enthusiasm among the people in town. Most of them, not everybody liked it, but many people. The local baker was baking werewolf cookies. They still at the same place sell these werewolf cookies shaped like a werewolf's head. And the one that was out this year has like flames coming from its mouth. It's really cool. So some of the local. There was also a man running for a local congressman, I think. Don't hold me on that position, but he had flyers made up with somebody in a big werewolf suit standing by the side of the road and signing their support for him. And he did win. That was good. So all of these things, people were asking me for 10 years. And I had another book that I really, really wanted to write, almost more than that one at the time. And I had a part-time teaching job. So I kept that, and I left the newspaper. And the first two books came out in 2003. And it pretty much hasn't stopped since then. So that's how I got, well, there's one more little detail. The only reason I got to do that, people are thinking, well, how did you get into the news business? Was because I wanted to be a cartoonist, and I was trying extremely, extremely hard. I wanted either editorial cartooning I liked or a comic strip. I was doing samples of both, and I'd gotten to know the man who ran one of the top feature syndicates.
Okay.
And that, I got a call from him one day, and he said, Linda, and that's pretty unusual, actually. I was pretty close to success. I don't know what would have happened if I'd stuck with it. He said, I want you to try out, we're going to have a new comic strip, and every day it's going to be featuring a different female cartoonist, only every day except Sunday. So we're going to call it 6 Chicks. Well, they
that's cool.
Yeah, it was kind of funny. As it turned out, I was the 7th chick, and there wasn't a 7. So at that point, that's what made me. Oh, and also that publisher went to Bahamas on his vacation and was drowned, sadly. So that was my advocate. Yeah, I felt really bad. So anyway, I went to the newspaper and I said, look, I will draw editorial cartoons for you free if you'll just publish them, because I have to have something published. And they liked them, and so they did, and then they started paying me $8 an hour, or excuse me, $8 a cartoon. $8 an hour would have been much better. $8 a cartoon, which wasn't a fortune even then, but it was something.
No.
And so I was there one day.
Your foot in the door.
Yeah, it's getting the foot in the door, exactly.
Yeah.
And actually, I take that back. I was talking to one of the editors on the phone about the cartoon I was going to draw that week. And he said, hold on a second. And then he came back to the phone and he said, hey, would you like to be a reporter? So-and-so just quit. We really need to have somebody right now. And I thought about 2 seconds and thought, how hard could this be? That was my exact thought. And so I agreed. And then the next thing I know, there's werewolves.
All right. So
that's a heck of a way to get broken in as a werewolf story.
Exactly.
Yeah. There's even more I'll put in my book about that aspect someday. But,
all right, Linda, we have to take a quick break for station identification, but we'll be back in just a few minutes. You're listening to the Full Spectrum Project.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, Birmingham, Alabama.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but... Nope. That'll do. Hello. I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk radio.
Listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experienced Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Since 1948, Fate Magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting. You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
The time is 23 minutes after the hour.
And we are back. You are listening to the Full Spectrum Project, and we have been talking with Linda Godfrey about, basically, I guess, werewolves. And it's really been fascinating. So I was kind of curious about something. You stated in one of your books that werewolves sort of invaded the United States around 1930 the 1930s, give or take. What can you tell us about this? Do you think that they were there before, or was it just that reports started coming in about that time?
Well, for that kind of line of inquiry, I don't like to use the term werewolf. I use it because it brings you an instant image of what it looked like, the thing that people were describing, except it doesn't wear blue jeans and plaid shirts almost ever.
Teen Wolf did.
That's right. He was an exception. Yeah. Very, very big exception. But Michael
and he played a hell of a basketball game too.
He did.
He did.
Michael J. Fox is a personal hero of mine, definitely. Yeah. Because of that, and because I also have Parkinson's disease. So, and sometimes these things, a lot of these things happen to inordinate numbers of investigators, which seems like there's more than just chance there. But I'm not sure when people started really seeing, and evidently not reporting, when they started seeing upright wolf-like creatures, that were behaving in ways that were definitely not things that normal animals would do. The 1936 year came about because that was the year that something that, according to the careful description by the eyewitness, who was a very big, brawny, formal boxer, was working as a night watchman on the grounds at a home for developmentally disabled or different types of affliction that would require nursing. It was basically a nursing home for all kinds of people, run by the Catholic Church. And it was on those grounds that this man came upon a very it's kind of a big, hilly, I don't want to say tomb, an effigy mound. Excuse me, it wasn't even an effigy mound. It was just a burial mound. Effigy mound means it was pictorial, it portrayed something. This was just a big, round, sort of very common burial mound. And these things were generally, if you weren't a farmer or somebody that had to cut them down, they would be left in place. And so this had been there for probably 1,200 years. It's the estimated age of these things. And he saw something moving on it, moving fast and deliberately, and he couldn't make out what it was. He was doing something with its arms. And so he stepped up, and again, he's over 6 feet tall. He had a flashlight with him, and he shined it on to this mound. And there, digging in the mound, was something that looked like part Dogman and part Bigfoot. It had traits of both. And it looked up at him and looked him in the eye. And he said, just like all the later witnesses would say, he felt that it was a creature straight from hell, was how he put it. And when he shined the light on it, it stood up for a minute and ran away. Well, he went out the next night armed with a big mag-light type of flashlight. And I'm not going to, don't hold me on the exact weaponry description. I'm not too up on my mag lights. But anyway, he has something heavy to use. And the creature, sure enough, was there again, digging. And this time it stood up and it made a sound toward him. And to him, it sounded like Gadara. And you can read that two ways. Gadara, well, actually three. It could be a meaningless growling sound. It could be a growling sound that was trying to imitate the man, or whatever the man was saying to him. Or it could be a repetition, because this man was praying at the time, of the area in the Near East, or far, no, let's see, what would be the, excuse me, every time you guys put a pop-up ad in there, I see it. or not an ad, but a message I see and forget what I'm talking about. Anyway, there's a region where Jesus would preach called Galilee, and an area of that was Gadara. And so there was a man called the Gadarene who was having some bad mental problems, and that was the one that Jesus drew them all out of the man, and made them go into a herd of pigs, which then dropped down into the sea. Everybody pretty much knows that story.
Right.
So there was just the possibility that it was the sound the animal normally made, or there was this kind of really amazing connection with a very important, especially when you're talking about the subject of the paranormal, of demons and things that could be taken out or thrown out of a human being and induced to do things. And so that was, and there are a lot of, I don't know where this came from, but somebody wrote it on a website and it got repeated, that this night watchman was just driving around past, well, that you couldn't have done that then, because in 1936, there was a little road that went to a country church, and that was about it. The main road wasn't there, so you couldn't have driven around and seen that that mound at the time. Now, I did some more digging. It took me 6 years, but I found out from somebody that that little church I just mentioned, across the little, just really a pathway from the Institute, had a very well-known at the time problem with demons at the church, and there was a big ceremony that they had to bring what they call demons out of this young boy that had them. And the thing was, supposedly they went from the boy into the minister, who was a very godly man, and was tormenting him. They would pull his covers off at night, and throw the bed over and that kind of stuff. And he eventually left to get away from it. And so, it seems like on the face of it, the appearance of a wolf standing on his hind legs, which is not a paranormal act or unusual otherworldly act at all, that this was something more, something eerie, something that nobody could explain. And when you dug into it, literally as the night watchman did, you would find things that you couldn't understand or believe. And I think that is one of the things that has kept this legend alive so long, because when I wrote my first book about it that came out in 2003, I really believed that I was setting down once and for all what this was, and people would have something to examine and answer their own questions, and that would be that. And of course, I was never so wrong. Here I am 30 years later.
Right. I was curious. You had mentioned that the report in 1936, that the person making the report said that the creature looked like it was half wolf, half Bigfoot.
Right. He drew a picture. And I don't know that he put it in exactly that way, because Bigfoot wasn't a thing back then. But when he drew the full-length photo, he actually dictated it. His son drew it as this man thought that he was dying on his deathbed, and he wanted the world to know about it. He had never told anybody about it except his wife, even Joe, the man who.
Well, so I'm curious. Could these wolf-like creatures actually be like a Bigfoot? Has anyone ever linked the two creatures as if they could possibly be related in some way? Maybe a hybrid of, two other creatures, maybe a Bigfoot and a bear or something like that?
Yeah, I got the permission to use his drawing, which his son said the father was very well satisfied with, and said it looked just like it. And I don't think it takes any big leap to see the combination of characters there. You know, it had more of the upright posture. It had human-like neck and shoulders, and little pointy ears on the head. But the face was more flattened than where a wolf's would be, and there were other obvious things. And I don't know that you have to go to cross-species hybridization to get something that looks like that. And also, if we'd had a snapshot, it would have been a lot more provable too. But I guess it could have been. But mating Bigfoot and a wolf really takes you to putting some species traits together that don't belong together, and that it would almost have to be done supernaturally. Or back in 1936, they did not have the sort of gene studies and equipment and knowledge that we have now. So I'm not sure if anybody thought that. Well, what this man thought it was a demon or devil from hell. That was what he said. And he was told me through his son. No, wait, that isn't making sense. He told me, speaking as his son told me, that his father was very, very religious, and yeah, and that also was something that impressed him. He knew his father wouldn't lie. Why would his father make up something like that on his deathbed? And if he had known what it could have been as a species. Remember, this is a guy who was outdoors at night all the time. He's undoubtedly seen some bears, although most of the bears were killed that were in Wisconsin at that time, but they still would come through once in a while. He was an outdoorsman. He would have knowledge and be able to tell this thing. Mm-hmm. But that's the first thing. Yeah, and you'll find a few settler stories that are sort of questionable, where there'll be something that looks like a wolf circling the cabin. You find in old newspapers. But there isn't a real lot of it until, I would say, the late 70s is when people who are reporting say that, you know, this happened to them then. So
So were they thinking back then? Oh, sorry.
No.
Were they thinking back then that these could be possibly cast out demons from people that were possessed?
I think that was probably a fairly common assessment of it. And they're actually not too far away, maybe a 15-20 minute drive in Whitewater, Wisconsin, which is known as the Second Salem. Around there have been shows on that too. They had one of the first, maybe the only, spiritualist college in that town, where they learned occult rites and things that you don't usually find at your local Methodist or Lutheran church, you know. In fact, never, hopefully.
Okay.
But so this was just another. Every time you'd open another little piece of it, something unexpected and pretty major would come out of it. And so, so you end up with this whole, even Whitewater's their water tower, which was it's now right in the middle of campus. It was on the edge of town before, but this water tower is really spooky looking, and it was designed with an iron fence that was made to keep things in rather than keep things from going out, which is kind of creepy.
I was going to say, what were they trying to keep in?
Well, that's up to your imagination, I guess, or things that they knew about. There also were 3 cemeteries in Whitewater that formed a perfect triangle, and at the site of each of these triangles, there would be weird, horrid happenings. And if you remember that I mentioned there was another book that I wanted to write first, and I did, and sold it even before the Beast of Bray Road. And that was called The Poison Widow, a story of sin, strychnine, and murder. And the Poison Widow lived in Whitewater, and she actually had a house that was bought later by a fraternity where she would practice serving poisons to her children to see by feeding it to rats to see how much it took to kill a rat, and then she'd project it.
Wow.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm not.
That's more.
Yeah,
yeah, to say the least.
That's more.
It's horrible. There's a whole story with. Yeah, and again, that book is sort of available yet, if anybody's interested. But it's not fantasy or fiction. It's true crime. It's considered true not paranormal. But the other thing is, the next book I wrote on that kind of thing, that was in the Weird Wisconsin book. And then I did a Strange Wisconsin for a different publisher because I had found all the little paranormal things had come out of the woodwork. I'd be giving talks on this book and people would come up and say, but did you know that this and this happened? And so there are just a ton of things. Almost everything paranormal happens to be connected with this Poison Widow. So.
And you said we could read that in the Weird Wisconsin book?
Yeah, you can read a short version, and the books are still available if you just go online and search for The Poison Widow, A Story of Sin, Strychnine, and Murder by Linda Godfrey. It's out of print, sort of. It's in print limbo right now, but there are existing copies. There are existing copies around. So and
okay. I'm gonna have to do that. I want to read about that.
Yeah. Well, if you can't find
it, I was kind of curious. You said that a lot of the paranormal things came back to this widow. Why'd you mention that as far as all these paranormal things happening because of her?
Because it just seemed weird to me that one woman who had actually had this little mouse-like personality. She baked for all the sick people. That's what she was really known for. She raised 4 beautiful, very intelligent, nice children. Her husband was a former teacher turned farmer and milkman, actually, and he was the one that got the short end of the stick in this story, because they rented out 2 rooms in their house, which was located right where the UW Whitewater's athletic complex is. Everything I would find out, I would say, where is it now? And, there would just be some sort of connection. But, it was really weird. The fun thing was she ended up going to prison, not to spoil it, but you kind of know that at the beginning. But I went and found where she landed and went to their house and basically said, I know what your granny did last century.
Yeah. What? Anything happened then?
We need to take a quick break for station identification, but we'll let you answer that when we come back, Linda. And you've been listening to the Full Sector Project, and we'll be back in just a couple minutes.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but... nope. That'll do. Hello, I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
This is Jason Bland, host of Midwest Paranormal Presents Paranormal Soup, where we stream live as a webcast every Sunday night, 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. Eastern, with guests who will blow your mind. Live ghost box sessions where you can call into the show to see if the spirits will talk to you, and the World Wide Web of Weird with the latest in paranormal news and evidence. We're bringing the weird every Sunday night, 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. Eastern on our Facebook page and YouTube channel. Don't forget to follow and subscribe.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk only on Paranormal Experience Radio. Broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 45 minutes after the hour.
And you are back with the Full Spectrum Project, and we have been talking to Linda Godfrey. And Pete, I think when we left for the break, you had a question for Linda. Do you remember? Pete?
Oh, I had asked. I'm sorry. My phone was clicking off and on. I had asked about if anything had happened. If anything had happened when you went up to the house and said, "I know what your granny did."
Yeah, that was really scary. Because I didn't know who these people were. They could have been all, occult practitioners, or, who knows what they could have been. And so I had a friend and her little girl go with me, and it turned out she was really just over the border, kind of near Lake Michigan. And we found her in the phone book. She wasn't alive anymore, but we went to the house, and that was really difficult. Again, how do you tell people that their stepfather? Did I mention that she remarried? She got out of
No.
She got out of prison. That's a whole separate story. I won't spoil too much. She was just this master of worming her way in and out of things. And there was a woman there who was, well, actually two elderly women, one about 50 and one about 70. And I said, "Excuse me, I need to know if you recognize this person." I took along one of the old historic newspaper articles because I knew that I wouldn't be believed otherwise. And they both said, "Well, that's Myrtle. What did Myrtle do?" And it turned out she had married a man. The whole family made draperies, and she cooked for them. She kept being hired as cook. She got one of the things that got her out of the Wisconsin prison was that she catered meals for the place's governor or head prison keeper. So she always found a way to get herself in a different place. It was just kind of amusing. And the older lady who would have been her stepsister, I believe, said, "I never liked that woman, and I didn't know why. Now I know why." So, and there were just eerie little things too. And I could go on because the poisoning happened with the aiding and abetting, and maybe mostly the working of a college student that was actually boarding with them, and he was also a piece of work to behold. So there's just a lot of interesting things. And I was just curious how a woman could want to kill her children. And there's an afterword by the psychologist who analyzed Susan Smith, who killed her children. I think she drowned them in the bathtub. So people might remember that. It was world famous.
Oh no, that was Andrea. Yeah. That was Andrea Yates.
Oh, okay. There's another
Susan
one.
Smith. Susan Smith's the one that put the car.
She's one that drove
into
into
the lake or
a
something.
or something.
Oh, yes, into
Yeah.
the lake. That's right. I'm mixing up my
Yeah.
water deaths. Sorry. So I don't have these in front. I've got 18 books, and sometimes I forget what's in them. You know.
I do the same thing.
I was going to say, I know that feeling. I'm coming out on 11, and I still go, wait, no, that was from that one. Wait, no. So
Yeah.
I get you.
Yeah. So anyway, but you get the picture. So it was just, and here's the interesting thing was that, and I could not put this in exactly as it was, but I said, well, what? After I'd interviewed him, I said, well, what do you really finally think it was that made her want to do these kind of self-destructive things? And he looked at me and he said, I couldn't tell my colleagues this, but sometimes people are just pure evil.
I believe that.
Yeah.
I believe that.
Yeah. Well,
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, having written about Charles Manson, I think he's another one that was just pure evil. So, I mean, I'm not going to dispute the fact that there are people out there that are just wrong on so many levels.
Well, being a private investigator too, I've seen a lot of evil or weird stuff that we do to ourselves, let alone dealing with supernatural stuff. So yeah, I get it completely.
Wow. Yeah, that would be interesting. But anyway, so we're pretty far from cryptozoology, and I don't know if you want to.
That's okay. We call ourselves the Full Spectrum Project for a reason. We'll cover just about everything. But I mean, if you want to get back to the cryptozoology, has anybody ever figured out exactly what these werewolves or creatures, whatever you want to call them, what they are and where did they come from?
No, not to my knowledge. And the thing is, it's just difficult to get one to sit down and let you, take a blood sample and give it a little, verbal test and see what it can do. We don't really know what that is. And it gets more confusing because as time has gone on in the past 30 years, people have kind of taken certain descriptions and put them in their own species, so that now a lot of people believe that there are actually 6 or 7 types of upright canines. And I do agree that there are definitely several, and I almost hate to say types, but there are a number of upright canines that you can fit into several broad categories, and one is just what I call the dog man, because if you looked at it and it wasn't standing up, you wouldn't know it from some kind of wolf-like creature. It could be a wolf, it could be a dog, but the type as long as it's the type with the wolf, people say it has a wolf or German Shepherd-like head. That's really standard.
Okay.
And it will have a tail. Like I said before, it won't be wearing clothing. It could be doing unusual things though, like running on its hind legs while holding prey in its forelegs or forepaws.
And running upright while doing this?
And running upright while doing that. It's been seen by many to go running up against a fence and then at the last second bound right over it. That's fairly common for people to note. It may be procreative because there have been sightings reports of regular sized ones with little ones, 2 or 3 pups, if you will, following the big one.
Okay.
And so that would put it in the category of some sort of adapted, maybe a wolf-dog hybrid that has adapted to do it. Because, again, walking on hind legs is not a paranormal act. Almost any mammal, if not all mammals, can do that, along with some lizards and other types of creatures. It's just sometimes there's a natural adaptation. My example was that one really amply filled place of upright creatures is the whole prairie area, in the Middle West prairie area. It almost seems to be a birthplace if you look at maps, and I do like to look at maps, and there are some online maps, that some interested people have made, and you can put Dogman map on there, and it might pop up. And it shows that there are a great many near the Great Lakes and in these prairies. And if you think about it, if you're walking on all fours and you're trying to find a deer in this tall meadow grass or something that would be advantageous to you, it might be lots better if you could just walk upright and see what's coming at you. You could then throw a small carcass or big chunk of roadkill over your shoulder, and you might have something that looks more like a shoulder, because actually canines don't have a true shoulder. If you get a chance to ever look at a skeleton, you'll see they're made quite differently. They're made to bear their weight on 4 paws. So it's kind of remarkable, but it still works, as the same kind of creature. And when I say picks it up and carries it over its shoulder, there has been a report that I at a place where I've helped the farm owner for 5 years to see what is happening with these. He has animal mutilations and very many weird things happening at his ranch, which happens to be right on Bray Road. So again, it sort of ties together, but that's the main kind. And then there's another type that is seen to look, they're described as looking more like those comic book characters that we mentioned earlier, with, a big bursting chest and real muscly shoulders and
big old long snout.
Yeah, and feet that look more like feet rather than claws. Kind of a lot of facial expression, usually dripping blood from the fangs, that kind of thing. And there are several ideas. The main one is probably that these are not really to be feared. They are guardians or early forerunners of people who, and I'm saying people in the terms of something that's sentient, but yet have taken animal disguise. And
I don't know about you, but I think if I saw something that had blood dripping from its fangs, I might be frightened by it.
Right, and people are most often terrified, with a few exceptions. There's some that thought it was really cool, but most just have a really hard time with it.
Oh, trust me, I would be thinking to myself, this is really cool, as I ran as fast as I could in the opposite direction from it. So.
Exactly. Yeah, and there's another type that I had seen from the beginning that when I started getting calls on the regular ones, people would say, I saw this thing. It's not exactly like what you described. And then they would go on to describe something that was more like a great hound, obviously doggish looking, not always, sometimes with, the German Shepherd. But the thing about it was its size. And to this day, when I get reports of this, they would say, well, it was the size of a Shetland pony. If you imagine a dog the size of a Shetland pony, or a half-grown beef calf. And those are big, heavy things, much bigger. And the thing about this creature is that it really seems to get its jollies from chasing cars, kind of like the stereotype of farm dogs. But it is known for kind of trying to edge the cars off the roof, and it'll run alongside the car. And people will say, I was in the driver's seat, and its shoulder was at the same height as where the bottom of my window opening was in my truck. So,
now, Pete, I'm just curious. Have you been letting Zeus out at night without anybody knowing it?
Well, there was a couple of days that I couldn't find him. Maybe he went there.
Maybe.
Zeus is my great Dane.
Yeah.
And they're large. I do know that.
Yeah, they are. So we're going to have to take a little break here to go into our Weird World News segment, but we will pick it back up with you on the other side of the news.
Okay, and I'll tell you what I call that creature.
Absolutely. So, Pete, would you like to introduce our Weird World News?
Ladies and gentlemen, I now give you the Weird World News wizard, Angela Mole. Angie, take it away.
Hey, y'all. It is Angie's world. Oh, and Angie, I expect a dad joke.
I'm a wizard now?
Yes, you are.
Do I have to move to...
Wizard dress.
Where was that? New Zealand?
It was New Zealand, yeah.
All right. Well, I've got some stories for y'all tonight.
Awesome.
Yeah. Okay, so a man was walking along a beach in Wisconsin, and he happened upon a foil package he initially thought was a chicken breast. He was looking for beach glass for his sculptures. And he unwrapped this package and found a large brain with flowers and something known as Joss paper money for the dead, which is a Chinese tradition.
Oh, wow.
I was wondering where I left that.
We found it.
Yeah, it's been gone for a while, Brian.
So, for whatever reason, this was on the beach. And he actually asked, there were some city workers who were nearby. He asked them for confirmation. Hey, is this a brain? And they were like, yeah, looks like it.
Well, I'm sorry. As somebody who spent 35 years as a city worker, if somebody came up and asked me, is this a brain? I'd be looking at him like, dang it, Jim. I'm a city worker, not a doctor. Sorry. I just had to go there. But I mean,
Angie, where's the stick?
I mean, I know that's like a Star Wars thing or something.
Oh,
I don't know.
No. Star Trek. Stop it. Just
Star Trek.
But seriously,
whatever, it's a star thing.
Why would you ask city workers if this is a brain?
Well, and that's the thing, because like it was whole and it was not tiny either. I mean, the guy posted it on Facebook, and it
wasn't Brian's then.
Watch it.
Well,
I'll find it someday.
Unless he dropped it in Wisconsin. And so why am I stuttering? Okay, so a recent update from the Racine Medical Examiner stated that it's not a human brain, but they aren't sure what kind of animal it's from. Now, I'm also going to say that the only place I found an update was from, I believe it was a CBS affiliate somewhere in Wisconsin. I think it was Racine, but I don't remember. And TMZ said something about it, but I don't trust anything they say. So I'm going to stick with the CBS affiliate.
There you go.
Okay.
And I did try to look at more information about the tradition of Joss paper or hell money or money for the dead or whatever you want to call it. But I couldn't really get enough information from the actual event to be able to give you any kind of definitive information about it, because, everything I know about it, and that, is a very limited amount, is that this would be something that you would do for loved ones. I haven't seen anything about a tribute for, animal or whatever. So I don't know, but.
So here's a weird thought. We've been talking about wolfmen basically in Wisconsin. I wonder if they do the same thing. Think about it. One of them died and they wrapped their brain. All right, I'll be quiet.
Thank you. And on that note,
I was speechless, Brian.
There was There was a massive semen explosion during an Australian fire today.
What?
Okay, go ahead.
There's a cattle breeding and artificial insemination company that was storing bull semen in cryogenic cylinders. And when the fire started, the liquid inside expanded when it got hot, and the lid started blowing off. And
no.
Firefighters were dodging the projectiles while fighting the fire.
Those things are
Luckily, no firefighters were injured, which is good for several reasons. But I mean, for one of those, like, can you imagine filling out that workers' comp paperwork?
No.
That's that one's too easy, Ange.
It was bound to happen, and now here we are. A Canadian man was charged with dangerous driving after taking a nap in his Tesla Model S while cops clocked him driving at over 90 miles an hour.
And he was asleep?
Well, that's what they're saying. And the 20-year-old driver had his seat fully reclined and appeared to be asleep, as was his passenger.
Oh, my Lord.
The vehicle was initially speeding at 87 miles per hour, but when the officer turned on his lights, all the vehicles in front of the Tesla moved to the right lane. And with the clear left lane, the Tesla sped up.
I wonder if this
I got nothing.
Was it one of those cars that drive itself?
Yeah, it's an autopilot. It's got autopilot. Now, but I've seen firsthand how faulty the autopilot is on Model S's. I was in Galveston and watched one just completely run another vehicle off the road into a turn lane because it crossed over into a different lane in the middle of an intersection. And the guy was on his cell phone, never even noticed the car did it.
Yeah, and then there was that one about a year or so ago where they actually ran over somebody and killed them.
Well, and the thing is that, like, my understanding is that the autopilot function requires some kind of input, like in certain time intervals, and I don't remember how long it is and all of that, but we have seen time and time again that there are glitches with these cars. So, but initially they had just given him a ticket for speeding, and then they came back later, because this happened in July. And they came back later to charge him with reckless driving, and he's due in court in December. So after evaluating the situation, they retroactively gave him charges for this.
Good. I cannot fathom that. I mean, first of all, I have control issues. I have to be able to be the one driving.
Yes.
But how can you fall asleep on a roadway with your car, let alone doing 95 miles an hour? I couldn't do it if it was doing 15 miles an hour.
Was it a teenager?
He was 20.
Even at age 20, I've had that's college age, I guess. I've had two teenage boys, and they could fall asleep anywhere on anything at any time.
Right. Yeah, I mean, when I was a teenager, I could fall asleep anywhere too. But I don't know. I mean, I have an opinion about Elon Musk, and this guy who has this vehicle obviously puts a lot of faith in the technology, and that's how he was able to go to sleep. Either that or he was on something. But I have absolutely
a combination.
Yeah, I have no basis for saying that besides just, knowing a person. Like, how could you fall asleep like that? I don't know.
Yeah,
maybe
that's mind-boggling.
Really tired.
Well, if he keeps doing that, he's not going to be alive long.
Well,
you won't have to worry about it. Take his license from him.
Yeah.
And they did suspend his license for a little while too. Yeah.
Oh, good.
I hope so.
So, on a happier note, the living cocoon is a biodegradable coffin made of fungus, microbes, and plant roots made by a Dutch biotech company named Loop.
Loop?
Loop.
Loop.
As in, like, circle of life.
Okay, then.
I guess. I don't know. So Loop and Delft University of Technology and the Naturalis Biodiversity Center developed a coffin that contains a moss bed full of mushroom mycelium, plant roots, and an ecosystem of microorganisms.
Okay.
And initial tests show that the coffin degrades in 30 to 45 days when it's buried in soil, and the bodies contained inside should be composted in about 3 years.
So you don't break into a cemetery and eat those tomatoes, is what you're saying.
Basically,
No.
yeah.
Or the mushrooms.
I was going to say, you can have the mushrooms.
I mean,
Yeah.
they'd probably be really good.
Oh my God, no.
Let me know how that happens, Ange.
I don't pick mushrooms anywhere except the produce department of my grocery store. So
Okay.
I'll
Well,
never be able to
okay.
answer you.
I was going to say, you might want to start checking the packaging and see where the mushrooms are starting to come from in, say, 3 to 4 years.
Well, I do
Yes.
know my ex-husband's from Gonzales, Texas, and they have a mushroom farm not too far outside of the city limits. And
Mm-hmm.
the mushrooms that I get from my store come from the Gonzales Mushroom Farm.
Well, just make sure they do
Okay.
not open up a cemetery.
Gotcha. I'll make sure of that.
Yeah.
I also heard too that you can also bury folks now with in a kind of a cocoon like thing, and they put a tree on top of you, so the
Yes.
tree actually absorbs the body.
Right.
It looks like a giant pod, sort of like root ball thing. Yeah. I saw what you were talking about.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just want to be mummified.
I just can't get Forest Lawn Farms out of my head now.
Well, that's an interesting collaboration.
Sorry.
Did you guys know that the biggest living organism is a mushroom under a whole bunch of trees in Michigan?
Really?
I
Don't
can't think of
tell
the
me.
name of the town.
Northern Michigan, probably.
Somewhere, I think it's more mid Michigan. Yeah, it's I can't think of the name of the town, but they have a mushroom festival every year. And
How big is this mushroom?
It's like huge. Many, it's beyond acres. If I had my Strange Michigan book, I'm going to find my Strange Michigan book and look it up because I feel that's important for people to know.
I agree.
Okay.
Especially if we're talking about bees. I know I've got it here very, very handily.
I wonder if it's edible.
Oh.
I wouldn't try.
Oh, okay. So what I see here is a different, well, granted, this is 2014, but this is saying
No,
that...
it's 2020.
No.
She's just living in the past.
I thought you hit a time slip or something. We were just trying to call you home.
Well, what actually constitutes the largest living organism is like people kind of argue about that, because this one is saying that it's honey fungus that measures 2.4 miles across in Oregon. But when I was taking my dendrology class, and what I'm also finding right here is that Pando is an aspen clone forest, and it is primarily in Utah, I believe.
Okay.
But y'all don't care about all that.
Okay, found it.
What'd you find?
It's the giant fungus of Crystal Falls in Iron County, and it's one of Michigan's most popular tourist attractions, is literally nowhere to be seen.
The giant fungus
of Crystal Falls. Yeah, I actually have a refrigerator magnet of the fungus on my refrigerator at home. And this is a 38-acre subsoil mushroom that brings visitors from around the globe. And it is kind of funny because you go to see it and there's a big field, but you can't see the mushrooms because they're underground, but they have the sign that says you're looking at.
What a racket. They charge admission because you'd never know.
It gets better. Jeff and Saria Sirian, owners of Crystal Falls Ben Franklin store, and the founding members of Fungus Fest, explain that every year the town builds its own outdoor oven by stacking concrete blocks in a big square, then lining the inside with charcoal. A crane lifts the giant pizza pan, above the charcoal, and then the pizza is built layer by layer and covered with foil to bake it. And then they also have Fungus Fest t-shirts and mushroom-shaped refrigerator magnets, which of course I mentioned that I already have. And you can see it lies east of Crystal Falls, off Highway 2, very close to the Wisconsin border. So there you get that clash of the two tightened states. The 100-ton fungus. I'm not sure how they measure its weight. How would you weigh a 100-ton fungus that's supported by the ground? But it's
gotta just be math.
It says it's believed to be thousands of years old and very important to the Michigan ecosystem.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine your kids ask you, "Hey, Dad, where are we going to for vacation?" "We're going to Fungus Falls. We're going to the Fungus Festival." And
then you get there and
like,
you can't see
he's
it.
Lost his mind.
Then you
exactly.
get there, and the dad says, "Oh, we're here," and he gets out of the car, and the kids are going, "Where? What?" And
and they're whispering to each other, "The fungus is in Dad's brain."
Well, actually, here's something here's probably the neatest part. The record-breaking Armillaria bulbosa, that's the real name, was discovered by researchers hired by the low-frequency electromagnetic field system, which was formerly used for submarine communication. So we found out about the biggest living organism because we were trying to make
Wow.
There's weird chirping on my but anyway, yeah, so it's pretty cute. Very, very cute large thing. I'm looking at the picture. My fungus magnet, I wouldn't give it up for anything. It's just very unusual. Well, actually, the colors are kind of liquidy. Well, I'm not even going to go there. It's sort of a strange group of colors that I'll just put it that way. And unfortunately, I actually stood there and took the picture of the land where it is, but you can see a birch tree and nothing under it. So.
Okay.
Well,
but that's weird, Michigan.
I've got one more thing for y'all. And so just a quick note, we have talked about him several times on the Weird World News before. And I just thought I would throw out there real quick that Forrest Fenn died last week in New Mexico at the age of 90. And he is known for supposedly placing treasure worth over $2 million out into the Rocky Mountains and publishing a poem and a book that contained clues as to the treasure's location. And so at least 8 people have passed away while trying to find the treasure. Several government entities had begged Fenn to call off the hunt, but he never did. And the treasure was found this year in July in Wyoming. And that happened not too long after yet another treasure hunt related death. But now Mr. Fenn is gone as well.
Did they ever mention where the treasure was? I thought he was supposed to release that information or something.
Of course not. No, they
okay.
Which, I mean, I've already discussed my skepticism about a lot of this, and I think he went and retrieved it himself. And so I think that's why there's really not that much information about it. Because
if he retrieved it himself and didn't call off they said it was found, but if people were still looking for it anyway, that kind of makes him responsible, doesn't it?
You would think.
Well, people.
Wow.
You know, I don't know.
People are going to still look for it anyway.
In my opinion, there's a lot of inconsistency with this stuff, and you know, but I mean, that's all I got for y'all tonight. I am Angie. Thank you for tuning in to the Weird World News, and you are listening to the Full Spectrum Project on WBHM-DB, Birmingham, Alabama.
Thank you, Angie.
Well, thank you, Angie.
It was interesting as always. And it's 20 after, so we are going to need to take a quick break. But when we come back, we will continue our discussion with Linda Godfrey. And this has been one interesting show. So we'll see you when we come back right after the break.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, Birmingham, Alabama.
Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 23 minutes after the hour.
And we are back with the Full Spectrum Project. We are speaking with Linda Godfrey. We have been talking about creatures that she doesn't like calling them werewolves, but in effect, they are sort of werewolves. Am I getting that sort of right?
Well, the things that we think of as werewolves, if you hear that term and you think beyond, the standing up and the fangs and stuff, there's some pretty big differences. For instance, the term werewolves, which just means man-wolves, was usually applied to these wolf-like creatures in France and medieval Europe, where there were several centuries ago, there were witch trials. And if you were a witch, you were pretty much a werewolf. And if you were a werewolf, you were pretty much a witch. They all ended up the same way. Many innocent people were killed. I suppose some weren't completely innocent, but it's hard to judge from this point in the future for them. But they would sometimes be clothed. There were different parts to their legends. For instance, a real popular one was that they would have to have gotten a special evil sash and some salve to put on themselves from a former skin changer, might be a better word for it, or shapeshifter, and that these creatures, the men would or women would take the special fur sash and the ointment and use that to turn into one of those creatures themselves. And if, say, they got shot in the leg while they were out on their wolfy duties, then right after that, they would be seen to have the same scar on their leg where people knew they shot the actual werewolf. And there were hundreds of people that were really killed and devoured by several different famous werewolves, especially in Germany and France. We don't have any of that today. Almost without exception, the wolf-like looking creature and the human part ways very quickly. And even though they'll say it was chasing me, I felt sure it was going to have me for lunch, I looked back and it just jumped into the brush and went the other way. That's almost always what happens. So the behavior is really different. You don't have that big kill zone, like they did then. And it's also really different from the Hollywood conception of werewolves, much of which was made up in Hollywood. But even that little ditty, even the man who, is a good man, blah, blah, blah. I don't have the words right in front of me. Even that was made up for one of the Wolfman films. But that whole
Lon Chaney Jr.
Yeah. Even the man who says his prayers by night And if I sat here for an hour, I might think of the rest of it, but you all know which one I mean. But the idea of the moon having to be full when they can come out and run around, and of turning others into werewolves by biting them, those kind of things all came pretty much out of Hollywood, and so people have sort of played with the different ideas of it in film for a long time, and usually there's some sort of transformation involved. That's the main thing that hooks them together.
Well, is there any truth to having to kill them or ward them off with silver or anything like that, or is that Hollywood too?
Well, some people say the idea of warding them off with silver, which has special properties, supposedly, came from, there was the Beast of Gévaudan. It was a French werewolf who actually was running around. There might have been two of them. They were never quite sure. There have been some pretty good TV specials made on this. And there's one theory that they were hyenas. So nobody knows exactly what they were, but legend has it that they were killed by bullets made by melting down sacred mass objects from the Catholic Church and then making them into bullets. And that's what finally killed the Beast of Gévaudan.
I was going to say, even if it was hyenas, regardless of what the bullets were made from, the people would have most likely assumed that that's the reason, especially if they did think that they were actual werewolves.
Right, exactly. There was a TV show that came and interviewed the sheriff and deputy and the rest of the crew around Elkhorn, and for the occasion, just as kind of a gag, the Elkhorn sheriff had bullets made that appeared to be silver. They weren't real silver, but they were coated to look like silver. And I think he gave those around at one point in the film. I can't remember which filmmaker did that, but yeah. So that was an attempt to bring that old legend into the new place, where they, instead of just using them to kill the werewolves, they get them to have little trophies on their shelves. So, and it was just, people had a lot of fun with this, as I said in the beginning. Not everybody, but there were a number who did.
All right.
Well, you had mentioned about the werewolves being able to run on all fours and also stand up and either carry food or run on two legs. Bigfoot tends to do that as well. I mean, people have mentioned that he's been seen on all fours, and as well as on his two legs. So does that go back to what we were discussing earlier about maybe being some type of a hybrid or something?
I'm still not sure about that. I'm not sure that they are fully corporeal, that they reproduce by the usual means here on Earth. A lot of my Native American friends believe that they go to another realm, sort of between our realm, which we think is reality, and then higher realms above. It's kind of the next one up, and they can come to Earth to procreate, and it's also why they can leave it when they want to, and that's why you don't find the bodies. Now, I don't know if that's mostly legend, or there's some. Usually, when Native Americans have that I've known have legends like that tend to really just practically explain something, there's often a lot of truth to it. So I don't poo-poo anything. I think it's all something to take into consideration.
So,
how did the American Indians feel about that?
Well,
what were some of their thoughts on these werewolves, for lack of a better term, and things like that?
Well, many of the things that I have found show that quite a lot of them believed that they were just another kind of human, another type of people. It was just that, there was a Canadian band that called them the Hairy Heart people. I was just looking up. I found this really great book called Wisconsin Indian Literature, and it tells some of their sacred stories, which are not just meant as stories for entertainment. They are also to share and pass on the real ideas that each tribal people held in great esteem. And there's this great story about this young athlete in one of the bands, and of course it's supposed to have happened, many years ago, that they were participating in games, and the loser, I think it was the loser, because I just read this over rather quickly today. The loser had to marry one of the Bigfoot women, and that was in case instead of the prize, that was what they considered kind of a not their ideal bride, because they were quite a bit bigger than the humans and didn't have all the cultural attributes that the humans did.
Yeah, I wouldn't think it was a big prize myself.
So,
I mean, they kick your butt. So try to keep them happy.
Well, I have seen Bigfoots several times, and had it was actually my first really big thing that happened that was out of the ordinary.
Okay.
From the time I started back at the when I left the newspaper, and it took 20 years for this to happen to me, but I did actually see 3 different times a very similar looking Bigfoot that I think was the same one over the process of a year, in different spots, engaged in different activities, and each time it was arranged so I couldn't see its face, but it was obviously not a human body, and it was doing different things in each episode that I saw it. But if you want to go to my blog, which is lindagodfrey.com, and go to the homepage and go to the search for Bigfoot Branch, and that tells my story of how I had that actually, that's the one that I could say changed my world outlook.
Because then you knew that they were real.
Yes, there was absolutely no other explanation for what I saw. And it was daylight. It was nice weather. I was alone just walking. I shouldn't have been, but I was. And there were absolutely no people around at all. And I don't know what else possibly could have twisted a branch of a really clean, nice, young oak tree, a big oak tree that was 35 feet in length and about 8 inches in diameter. And it twisted it. It took two twisting motions and sailed it down past this tree to this trail where I was standing. And at that point, I left the building, if you could call it. But I went back.
I think I would have too.
I went back and took pictures, very good pictures, and measured things. And I called my friend to come and go there with me, and she brought her daughter. Her daughter got to see it. My friend and I were turned the other way, and she just caught it running into some heavy brush. And she said it was like speed walking, something like that. She imitated it, and that was really just how it went. But I think I've seen the hind end of one disappearing into some brush too on all fours, because it never came out. It went into this brush that was it was on a lawn, and it never came out. So unless there was a tunnel underneath, that's did. So yeah, they're amazing, but they're really, really different. I've drawn lots of comparison pictures of them both in a lot of my books and on several of my Christmas cards. It's something I think about too. But yeah, I don't think that they would be crossbred. There wouldn't be any need to. They're both awesome in their own right. How could you make a werewolf any better by crossbreeding him to a Bigfoot? And how could you make a Bigfoot any better by crossbreeding him to a werewolf?
Well, yeah, there is that. Just out of curiosity, you were saying that the Native Americans have a lot of lore regarding these creatures. Do you think that they kind of fall under the what's the name, the Wendigo, the shapeshifter?
I've seen some things.
Umbrella.
The way I've seen it described because you have to understand the Native American people have different beliefs according to the tribe. They sort of jive to the same main thoughts, but it's not always the same in each tribal story. So that makes a difference. You have to kind of think about that. But they do hold these stories, as I said, are teaching, they're teaching implements. They are entertainment. They are really a very huge part of the culture, and our Native American people are kind of sensitive about, culture stealing and taking these things and seeing them meant for things that were meant to be sacred are capitalized upon. And so I think that is hard for them sometimes. But I did make a trip to it's called the Bad River Chippewa up in the very top of Wisconsin, where there's the lake of overlaps with the shore of Lake Superior. And there are these special little things that are called spirit creatures, but they're not real. What they are is they're made out of concrete, and they're found at a spot on the southern shore of Lake Superior. It's called Marble Point because they look like really big marbles. Maybe some of them are 2 inches in diameter, and they're supposed to be sacred to this one spot on the beach. And there's a man who has a museum in Wisconsin where he went and got like 50,000 of them. He had bought some property next to the Native American reservation, and he took them and put them in a barn and had the Concretion Museum. This is in weird Wisconsin too. I have to say I did manage to get that in there. But a few weeks ago, my husband and I decided to take a ride up. We're both really outdoor lovers, and I'm from northern Wisconsin. My dad is anyway. And I had one of these little spirit things. And I said, I know they don't want other people to have them. They want it where it's supposed to be. And so we managed to track down their association place to get permission, and were escorted to the shore of Superior where it was supposed to go. And the man who was sort of guarding it said, yeah, just take it out of the box and chuck it in the lake. So that's all the ceremony there was. But I did that, and not because I had any special thing about myself, but I just thought, well, this is something that they believe belongs to them and they want it, and why can't I go and just give it? So, and I don't know if they're really on board with this. I'm sure I'm sort of a fluke. I had to explain really hard why I was there. But, maybe, so I'm not trying to incite people to do it for themselves. It's just something I did that I thought I could do and made me happy. They were surprised and said thank you, so kind of made my day.
Oh, that's nice.
There are supposed to be little things inside, though. I will add that.
I'm sorry, what was that?
There are supposed to be, if you break these little globular things, there are supposed to be fossils and things inside, but I do not condone breaking them, and I only just found that out when I went up there. They're supposed to be alive, each one of these balls.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think the Native Americans would appreciate people going up there and breaking them either.
No, definitely not. It is not something you want to do. But that's the old. Actually, I read that. I was looking up something else, and it was in some archaeological thing, like ancient fossils that carry life within them, that's pretty cool. And if maybe they just all have to be in this special shoreline to incubate or something. I don't know. But
be interesting to find out, though, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it's a very interesting thing. So, but they're called spirit balls or spirit marbles or spirit creatures.
Yeah, one of these days I'd like to go and check that out. I don't know how far my family in Michigan lives from there, but it might be an interesting couple-day drive if I'm out there and have the time. Mm-hmm. Speaking of Michigan, you mentioned the Michigan Dogman, and having family in Michigan, and my sister and her husband actually have and I cannot remember the name of the lake, but it's up in northern Michigan. Mm-hmm. Where exactly is the Michigan Dogman found? Where has he been seen? And is he sort of the same type of creature as the creature or the Beast of Bray Road?
Well, they're spotted all over Michigan. I know people who have seen them in the northern part and in the southern peninsula. Both. There's a huge state forest. Might also be part federal forest. I'm not sure, but it covers a lot of the left side of the lower peninsula of the state, and that was the traditional place where they were supposed to be first recognized and mentioned. And this happened when I was working on this at the newspaper when the news first came out. I had a call almost immediately from a DJ in Michigan who was wanting to make a way to make money for the local pet shelter. So he decided to make up a creature from old logging legends. There also had been a new contemporary sighting, which was unusual. And then he just made some up. And he made up this song that he called The Legend. And it was about a werewolf-like creature that was supposed to come out the seventh year of every decade. And so he had started doing that. But he called me at the newspaper office and said, hey, we got these things in Michigan, and I saw your drawing, and it's exactly the same thing. You know, what's going on here? So, and it turns out to me they look identical.
So, does the Michigan Dogman have sort of the same? Do people have people been attacked by this thing, or is it?
Well, it's usually the same way. They're bluff attacks. It's like a territorial / aggression move. As far as I can tell, that's the best.
So it'll charge you, but it won't attack you.
I haven't heard. I've only had one person that described being sort of attacked by one. He was on a hiking trail up in Canada, and the thing. He met it eye to eye on this trail. He was not armed. They looked in each other's eyes, and then you know what happens at the supermarket when you've got a cart, you're going one way, and the other one is oncoming and can't figure out how to get past you. He said that's what happened, but what came from it was that this creature had its mouth open, and he said one of the fangs made this horrible kind of rip in his side. He had to go to the hospital and get it tight, get it fixed. And he said I told them it was a bear because I knew that they would never believe what it really was.
Wow.
You had mentioned earlier that a lot of people report that they get almost a, I guess, psychic impression from the creatures, that the creatures are saying, I'm better than you, that type of thing. Does the Michigan Dogman give off that same vibe, if you want to call it that?
Yeah, and they don't all, but there have been incidents in Michigan where the same sort of thing has happened, and they're both very active. I know one retired sheriff's deputy who saw at least 4 of them between mid-eastern Wisconsin and then up in the UP, near the UP. He saw several of them too. 2 in Wisconsin and 2 in Michigan. So, and that's a pretty good witness, I think. Which, if you don't mind my saying so, we did make a film. My son, who's a filmmaker, and my husband and I, called "Return to Wildcat Mountain," that talks about the same sort of thing, colorations of animals and where they come from, but it's a little more entertaining than that. And I thought I might mention that. I had another idea and that totally left my head, so I'll think of this connection later. Sorry. But
not a problem. Well, we have to take another station identification break. But when we come back, we'll continue with this conversation. You have been listening to the Full Spectrum Project, and we'll see you in just a couple minutes.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but... nope. That'll do. Hello. I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
This is Jason Bland, host of Midwest Paranormal Presents Paranormal Soup, where we stream live as a webcast every Sunday night, 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. Eastern, with guests who will blow your mind. Live ghost box sessions where you can call into the show to see if the spirits will talk to you, and the world wide web of weird with the latest in paranormal news and evidence. We're bringing the weird every Sunday night, 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. Eastern on our Facebook page and YouTube channel. Don't forget to follow and subscribe.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk only on Paranormal Experience Radio. Broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 45 minutes after the hour.
And you are back with the Full Spectrum Project, and we have been talking to Linda Godfrey. And when we left, we were talking about the Michigan Dogman. And by the way, that kind of got me thinking. I had mentioned that I have family in Michigan, and Pete kind of knows what's going on with this. But my mom actually just broke her hearing aid a few weeks ago. And it's weird because she sent it in to get it worked on, and they said it would only take about a week. And now it's been, 2 or 3 weeks, and she's been trying to contact them, but she hasn't heard a thing since. So, we don't know what's going on.
Where's Angie? Where's Angie? Where's that stick?
She went to get the stick.
Down, boy, down. I apologize, Linda. He does dad jokes every once in a while.
I do not. Yeah,
Linda, I have a question. I have a question for you. Along with this goes kind of along with the Dogman and Bigfoot that we were talking about. I've seen people talk about like goat men. I mean, are these like some of the same types of people, or is this something different?
Well, probably a mix.
I've never seen a picture of what it is, so I don't know.
Well, yep, I've got that in. I think it's in Weird, Wisconsin, and Weird, Michigan. I'm not sure. I did write about it in I Know What I Saw, which is my latest book. I have a chapter on goat men and sheep men. They're kind of their own division, and they often seem tied to some sort of tale. For instance, people will be driving along and see this beautiful woman, and they pick her up, and it turns out she turns into a goat or has hoofs or something like that. And there's another version of it for women who, meet this good-looking guy at a barn dance, and it turns out to be a goat man. And sometimes there's a religious connotation. They're kind of different, but I find them interesting. I think they're more folktale. If anything is more folktale of all these creatures, it's probably the goat man. But also sometimes people will see a goat standing up and aren't used to seeing it in that position, and may identify it with a large dog, especially if it's a dark-colored goat. And several people have told me that they saw a weregoat, they called it. And I showed them my picture that I drew of my indigenous dog man, and they go, "That's it. Okay. That's exactly what it was." So I have had some witnesses testify to just picking the wrong animal. So,
because I know down here in Texas, we also have something called the Massachusetts. I think it's an owl man.
I've heard of that. Yeah. Very interesting.
You were saying, talking about the both the male and female version of picking up a woman or a man who's on the side of the road. It almost seems like it's kind of an adaptation of the Resurrection Mary urban legend.
Yeah, the Phantom Hitchhiker. Yep.
Yeah, it kind of
the girl from the prom. The girl from the prom. Those are the ones that I really call local legends, because you can there's always a motif that follows the same storyline, but they change the place, maybe some details. The girl from the prom in the back seat of the car that the guy picks up, and then walks her up to her house and asks, to if he can leave Janice here, and it turns out Janice has been dead for 3 years and died on her prom night. And so, those I'm pretty comfortable calling local legend, and people enjoy telling them. They're good campfire stories, and maybe they have a note of caution that you don't pick up strange people on the highway at night.
Yeah, not exactly the smartest thing you can do, especially in today's age, shall we say. One of the things that you mentioned in, I believe it's American Monsters, is something about sea monsters. And when I was doing some research on my book about Alcatraz, they had talked about some sort of a weird crypto sea creature in San Francisco Bay. But I was just sort of wondering what type of sea monsters have been reported around the United States.
Oh, pretty much any type that you can think of. There have been like large jellyfish that have washed up on shore, and they eroded differently than most land animals erode, and so they would be thought something else until proved. And I'm not saying that they're all wrong or anything. I think Nessie could be a real creature. I really do. I'm not giving up, because until somebody shows me there are no underground water passageways from Loch Ness to other wider spaces for them, I'm still holding out for that. But it's hard too, because it's probably one of the hardest cryptids to pin down when you're trying to describe them, because you'll see something out there and it's on the water. It's really hard to measure distances mentally of water unless you run out and just eyeball it as to what it could correspond to. But usually there's nothing in the water, and then there's sky, and it just makes it really hard to see and guess exactly how large the creature is. I found one that was in Delavan, Wisconsin, kind of around the turn of the century, when they had attendants for cemeteries, and there were these two women who were walking around the cemetery, and the guy who was there's a name for the sexton, I think it was, that took care of the cemetery, and they all started screaming there was a sea monster coming. And they said it was bobbing up and down. Its head was charging forward. It had leafy growths all over itself. And it got to the shore, and the sexton was going to try and defend everybody from it. And out walks this horse that had run away from his corral. And he'd been swimming through seaweed. And the seaweed made him look like he had this long, wild hair. And he just got up and walked around to her. But so it gives you an idea. I did write a book for a different publisher that's called, I don't know, I don't have it right in front of me. Sea Creatures, basically, is the title. Uh-huh. And it has it really opened my eyes to a lot of things that I did not know existed. And there are always things being washed up on beaches, and very often they can be mysterious and never solved, but a lot of them turn out to be like a raccoon that's partly degenerated. Especially when anything with claws starts that process, its softer parts kind of shrivel up, and the things like claws will seem like they're larger than they were. It's just one of the things that makes them it doesn't mean they aren't there, it just makes them hard to identify when you find one.
Yeah, I've often wondered, since we have these giant, literally giant catfish. I can't remember exactly where, but I know they're around the South, and it kind of makes you wonder whether those have been misidentified as some sort of lake monster or something by maybe a tourist or somebody who didn't know. But as far as Loch Ness, what do you think Nessie actually is?
I think it's some type of very old creature, kind of like the coelacanth, the very, very old patterned fish that they found that they thought was just gone years ago. And all of a sudden pops them up, and yeah, the coelacanth is not quite back in business as it was, but it's doing okay. So it's hard. There's a basking shark that when it dries up, parts of its, I don't know if it's the fat system or what, kind of turns into strings. It makes it look really, really unusual. The Loch Ness, I think, probably is maybe, it looks to me like it's more closely related to the swimming type of dinosaurs, like people will cite the brontosaurus, which isn't even a correct name anymore, but right. That type of long-necked swimming creature. There was one in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, around the turn of the century, which had tons of people coming up in trains, but whatever they could find to see it. The crowds were huge, and pastors and young men's associations were always trying to capture it, and sometimes it chased them back to shore. But really, hundreds and hundreds of people saw it. It's one of the best documented ones, and it kind of stuck around with occasional sightings until the motorized boats came in, and that sort of just ruined it for most of the sea and lake monsters, I think.
Well, I know Lake Champlain, if I remember right, supposedly still has sightings. I believe the creature's name is Champ, if I remember correctly.
Champ or Champy, yeah. And
right. And then also we have here in California and Nevada, Tahoe Tessie.
Oh, that's a great name. That's my favorite name. Okay, that's my new favorite lake and sea monster name. Tahoe Tessie. That's great.
Tahoe Tessie. And I'm just wondering whether they're the same type of creature that may inhabit Loch Ness. I believe I know Lake Tahoe is a landlocked lake. I'm not sure about Lake Champlain, but it kind of makes me wonder.
Maryland has one. Maryland has one on the Chesapeake Bay called Chessie.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. There are lots of it. But in that book, American Monsters, I have a whole chapter related to all of the lake and sea type monsters that I could find, and I was really surprised at how, it's not a chapter, it's a third of the book, it's a section. I have lake creatures, ground creatures, and flying creatures, not in that order. But yeah, I was really, really surprised to see how many that there were, and the flying creatures too. There was more than I was aware of. So that's actually, I think, my best selling of the four that are published by Tarcher Penguin. But
is American Monsters?
Yeah, American Monsters. Mm-hmm. But they're all close. But that's, I think, the most.
So, you have you done any research on the Thunderbird? Because we had talked a couple shows back about a case that I believe took place in Chicago, where they said a child had actually been grabbed by one of these creatures, and I guess it turned out that it was overhyped or something like that. Are you familiar with that?
Well, I think so. This is one that it wasn't right in Chicago. It was more of a rural area, and according to the story, which was in some newspapers, this very huge unidentified bird came down and swooped up one little boy who was screaming and kicking, and I think he was at school, and everybody who was there hung onto his legs and tried to throw things at the bird, and it finally dropped him. But there have been a few others that didn't work out so well. But it's the start of that book. I started with the flying things, and it begins with what I think was probably one of the best sightings of a really unknown bird ever, and it happened up in northwestern Wisconsin by a man who was just riding by a meadow with his bicycle one day, and something made him look over to his right, and there was this gigantic silvery white plumed bird with a kind of a long beak, sort of like a stork, but not quite. And it ran out of the field and when he went to just chase it, and he watched it flap its wings. So he had all the advantages of viewpoint. He saw it kind of crouching in the field. He saw it running. He saw it trying to take the air, and then finally to take off and just go to parts unknown. And the radar station that was at this little place where he was staying did not show it at all. He thought it would give him some real information, but it didn't. And that's at the beginning of the American Monsters book.
Yeah, I love that story. But unfortunately, we are out of time. I just wanted to say thank you so much. That was I found that absolutely fascinating. Hopefully, we can have you back.
I really enjoyed it too, Linda. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Linda. And next week, please join us when we welcome forensic psychologist and author Catherine Ramsland to discuss some of the most haunted crime scenes. That one should be quite interesting. So until next week, I am Brian Clune.
And I am Pete Haviland. And for Angie Mole, we thank you for listening to us this evening, and a special thank you to Linda Godfrey for a great talk tonight.
Absolutely. Thanks again, Linda. And hopefully you guys will tune in next week, and we will look forward to it. So thank you for listening.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk radio.